Hey guys, welcome. Just wanted to do a quick update. I hope you can hear me. I think I got the dryer going. I'm not going to turn it off. I think that the volume will be okay. So it's December 28th. I think it's December 28th today. I want to give you guys an update on the Bokashi worm farm. So as you guys know, I lost the 1,000 worms essentially. Maybe 2 or 3 live from there. I've combined all my test things into these black bins. And the cocoons, let's talk about the baby cocoons. So I wrote some things down here. So on November 4th is when I got the worms. By November 14th, some of them had birthed, okay, because they were obviously in that later time. On the November 21st, I abandoned the Bokashi system. As you guys realize, the Bokashi, the way I had it all set up through the buckets, the lazy man's approach didn't work, okay? Nevertheless, I took all that Bokashi and I mixed it in with cardboard. So let me just continue on here. That's when I did that on the 21st. And then I ended up flipping it on the 25th. And then I added some more cardboard, etc. I'm going to talk about that, the pitfalls there. And on the 28th, I added some of that wasn't hot at all. Some of that to test. They weren't allergic to it. They were eating it okay. As a matter of fact, they liked that stuff. But what I ended up doing was, because it was too moist, I ended up making looking on the internet for an easy way to make it where there is no heat now. What I did was mix the Bokashi with the cardboard. But then I did something else differently. So I put that aside. So what I did was got some cardboard, some paper, some peat moss, and I got a little bit of IMO, which is indigenous microorganisms. And that's nothing to talk about right now, but I'm going to fill you guys in on that. I don't see any effect of that on the pile, but basically what I did was mix that up, and it continued to maintain its temperature normal, like room temperature. So that's pretty much the easy bedding to do. I got that off the internet, but that's not the purpose of this whole deal. So the purpose is to take your food waste and convert it in an economical way, and a efficient way, and a quality way. And that's what I'm trying to do. So what ended up happening was the compost, so that one was set aside, I monitored, and it was good. Okay, but now the Bokashi compost with the cardboard, it was too wet still. So I added more cardboard, and it was still too wet. So how can you tell as you squeeze it? And it should be just a little bit of any kind of water's coming, but it's really sopping wet. So I added more cardboard, more paper to it as I'm mixing it. Then I ended up adding some sawdust that I have under here. Okay, I added some sawdust, mixed it up. Very, very nice texture. I covered it up, and there's little holes on the top of the bin to allow some air to come in. Well, that turned themophobic or phoic or something of that nature. In other words, that started becoming hot compost, which is what you do outside. When you do your compost, you're supposed to make it hot. It ended up being like 135, 140 degrees. I don't know if that had an effect on the Bokashi. Remember, the Bokashi is full of bacteria, yeah? And the bacteria that's in the Bokashi is anaerobic, means it doesn't need oxygen. So when you dump out the Bokashi in the cardboard, okay, it becomes aerobic. There's oxygen now, all right? So I'm not sure if those organisms, those bacteria, adapt both ways. I think they do, but nevertheless, once the air is there and I added more cardboard, it essentially took off. And what you want to do is maintain, I think it's 120, 130 maybe max. Okay, and I'm learning all this and I'm sharing it with you guys. Degrees Fahrenheit, but it's up there. It was at the top there. So when you see that heat, you're supposed to turn it so that it cools down a bit. Basically, those bacteria are going to town with what you got in there. So I'm going to approach it a different way. I do not recommend dumping a whole bucket, etc. I'm going to do it a different way so you can see. Anyway, so what ended up happening was it started to release a lot of heat, and it started to stink a bit. So I got a little air filter to suck up originally, but it still continued on. I had to put it in the garage because it was still going too strong. As you can tell, my wife did not like it, neither did I. So I ended up buying this 3x3, okay, I think it's 6 foot tall, grow tent. All right, I bought it from an individual here, and I also bought another thing from another individual, which is a fan and a carbon filtration system. Okay, and so I put those things together and I put it there in the corner. So you can see I moved my clothing thing here, put that back there, and it's got a zipper, so it's all enclosed. And the purpose of that was to take the whatever's coming off of it, heat and stink, and filter it out. Now, after I brought it in from the garage, pretty cold out there, I brought it in from the garage, I put it in there, and it did a pretty good job. But I was already ready to set it up going outside right here with some pipes. I was ready to do it because I don't like to do things half. I like to do them so that get the most value out of it and we learn something, yeah? Anyway, that's my first experience really with the thermophobic or something. Maybe in the comments correct me. I'm not good with names. But it's the hot compost. So anyway, I let that thing cook, and then it finally eventually, and I kept flipping it. The key is to keep flipping it. So just go in there and flip it so that the hot goes on the outside and the cold goes in the inside. You want to get this cooking. Now, again, I don't know if that's beneficial for the beneficial bacteria that's in there, what you did in the Bokashi. But I know that the worms love all that kind of stuff. Okay, all that bacteria, the worms love it. So essentially, the worms are what they're doing. I want to give you a good understanding of what it is that I'm learning. Okay, I'm going to explain it in 1 sec. So the little spider mites, it's not a deal. You just use this stuff right here. Okay, diatomaceous or diatomaceous earth, it's called. It's a white powder. It's from some kind of seashells of some sort. This controls the spider mites. Now, the little spider mites are not a big deal. As a matter of fact, I just use this stuff on the outside of the actual bin just to keep them from coming out, etc. And if I see the population growing, I just put some on there. But they're actual shredders as well. They're part of the ecosystem, yeah? So the bacteria that we can't see, though, is they have these shredders. They have all these things that break it down. So in essence, the worms aren't eating your food. The worms are eating the bacteria. But the dust mite, the mites, right? There's different kinds. Mine were little red ones, and you can see little eggs on in the bin. But I got that at full control, no problems. I didn't want to incorporate anything like soils from the outside because I didn't want to bring anything else into the mix. So I just basically Bokashi and cardboard, okay? And then I applied some sawdust. And then the other thing, as I mentioned to you, was the peat moss, which peat moss is just used a little bit of it to absorb some of the water, okay? The other thing, as you can see right here, this thing right here, this is completely full of the biggest pest, okay, that I do not like to deal with. I've been dealing with this pest for a long time. I see videos of other worm people and compost people. These gnats, okay, that's what you call them. They're little flies, essentially. These gnats are fungus gnats. And fungus is a beautiful thing when it comes to what we're doing here, okay? Basically, when you got Bokashi, you're going to get this white mycelium type fungus, which is very good. This is what's lacking in our gardens, okay? there's a lot of bacteria in the bokashi, okay, and but we need that fungus to be a 101 essentially equation. So whatever you got on bacteria, you need in fungus, especially if you're growing like trees and stuff like that. So in the garden, it might work for less, with less fungus. I'm just sharing stuff that I'm learning, yeah. But just to correct the situation, on my channel, you see that I tell people to, when they get their bokashi, to go out, dig a trench in their garden, and dump it in. I've only repeated what I heard, and it works to a degree, but I will not do that anymore. Why? Because I've learned some things. First and foremost, you shouldn't be digging into your garden unless this is the first time you're ever doing it and you want to put some bacteria into the play, right? Your dirt or soil isn't good. You can do that, but don't do that again. So I will not dig a trench, period. You're better off just to put it in a pile and just keep it on top and let the microbes work on that. But not digging where your garden is. Why? Here's another thing I want to make sure you guys understand. Your plants, you know how we pull up the roots? I did some of them in my garden. I won't do that again. Why? Just cut them at the surface of the dirt. Leave the roots. It's important to leave all this stuff underneath, because the roots will decompose underneath, and it's still leaving these cavities whereby this mycelium, this fungus, can still continue and grow. Essentially, you got your roots, and then these mycelium or fungus that we're trying to develop is an extension that just simply grows out. Okay, this is a living organism, and it grows out, so it allows the root system to pull in nutrients from bigger area. So you shouldn't pull up your roots. You should just cut them at the surface. Leave it. Don't till your ground. I covered mine with leaves. I think that's a good thing what I did. Why? Because I'm protecting the microbe activity that's down there. I'm giving them like a cover. Okay? So I think I did that right. That's important. But don't dig out a section of garden and throw in your bokashi. Don't do that. Anyway, I've got lots to talk about, but this is already, I think, a little bit too long. Where did I want to go with it? So the worms are healthy. So basically on the 27th, I fed the worms some of that compost that heated up. Put some on the bottom of each bin. I seen some mature ones. Now, the mature ones I got on my calendar. They should have come out in January 2nd or so, but they're actually, some of them have the clitelium. I think that's how you say it. It's the band close to the top of the head. You got the head, then you got clitelium, and then the rest of the body. This is where they attach to each other and start making cocoons, one each. They will make a cocoon, and each cocoon can have 1 worm, 2 worm, 3 worm, 4 worm. I don't know. Depends. But some of them are already at that mature level, which is ahead of the game, okay? Because basically from cocoon to hatch, it should be 23 to 30 days. And from juvenile to mature should be 40 to 60 days. So according to my figures, they're ahead of the game. And you're going to realize that they love this stuff. So the bokashi... See those Fungusgnats right there? These things I cannot stand. But listen, we're going to try to beat those things. I got these things. This is very important. I also have this other thing called BT, which is like a bacteria as well, that I've poured for 3 weeks, once a week, on these. And what that does is when these little things lay eggs, and they lay a lot of eggs, and then the larvae are born, and then they go eat. But this here, BT, which stands for bacteria something or other, when they eat that, it starts to upset or destroy their innards, and then they stop eating and then they die. That's the whole principle. I've been doing it for 3 weeks. Should be getting there, but as well, I ordered, like you guys know, another 10,000 cocoons, and they came in soil. So if you're bringing in plants from somewhere or some soil from somewhere, chances are they have fungus gnat larvae, or the little eggs or whatever, and then they hatch, and then you got them in your house. I don't want this to be discouraging to you, because these things control the males. Okay? That does not kill the males. However, I've been testing, and they are attracted. You can see all kinds of little things in there. They are attracted. That's the little granules of BT. It's just simply, you can see right here, this is the same stuff. You can see them in here. Okay? So, like we do Bokashi, we grow out lactic acid bacteria and we multiply it. That's what I'm into. That's what you need to be into. You're not into gardening vegetables. You're into feeding soil, okay? That's, if you feed the soil, the byproduct is the vegetables. So this is a bacteria as well, BT, and so it basically the company that does this obviously grew them to a certain level, and in numbers I mean, and then put them in the substrate that's dry, so basically puts them to sleep. That's my understanding, because that's what we do with Bokashi. As a matter of fact, I got a very, subscribe if you haven't, because I've even made that even more simpler for you, okay? You want to subscribe. This is super easy. I'm trying to make things real easy. So once they've accelerated, like we do, lactic acid bacteria, then what we do is we put a substrate, which is wheat bran, and then we essentially dry that and put it to sleep. That's the same thing they're doing here, okay? But I don't have a microscope. I don't know what exactly. I cannot see, right? So essentially I kept some of that alive just by putting sugar, but I don't know if it's good enough. Because it should be like lactic acid bacteria, if you think about it. Essentially, the bacteria will need oxygen, and it will need some sugar in order to thrive. And then I can't see why you can't pour it over any substrate as well and put them to sleep, just like we do with lactic acid bacteria. So if you know anything about this, or got a microscope, or, you know, the practice, I think it works, but I just don't know enough about it. But I think that's what I'm going to discover, okay? So I've kept some of those little flakes going, and they're bubbling, which means they're alive. But I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. So what else did I do? So has this controlled it? Well, this will control the males, etc. These ones, because they eventually die. But the eggs and the continuation, that's supposed to do it. I don't know if it's going to. So what am I doing next? Well, I bought a sewing machine. Okay? I don't know how to sew. But I need the sewing machine because on these particular things, okay, what I'm going to do is I bought some landscape fabric. And what I want to do is put covers. Why? Because those Fungusgnats, they so you can see the pins right here, circular. Okay, and the whole idea is to put elastic and put this over, because they can't get through this. Okay, so I don't want the males to come in here. And this is, let's air in, let's water in, but it's so tiny, none of these things are going to come in. So I want to cover these trays, because I think that this will be the solution. Have some elastic and cover them. I got to make a bunch of them. I don't know how to sew. Nevertheless, I'm going to do it because I'm trying to solve the problem. You could put them in the tent right there. Now pay attention. In there I have those bins. 1, 2, 3 composting bins. The other day I opened it up, and lo and behold, in one of them I could see the little flies coming up. Where do they come from? I'm not sure. They do have holes in this. Maybe it was when it was sitting out here. But I did use BT on that and mix it. So Trial and error is what's going on here, folks. But nevertheless, what you want to do is you want to eliminate as many problems as possible. Anytime you bring soils from outside, etc., you're going to potentially bring these things in. They love plants. They're probably on your plants. If you keep things really wet, they're attracted to that. On these bins, obviously, I keep them wet because we're dealing with worms. So this will dry up the inside portion of it. However, we still use the plastic to cover it. But this, I think, is going to work if I can get this to sow and cover the top. It'll prevent them from going in. They won't lay eggs. The worms will be protected. I can water right on top of that if necessary. So, listen, guys. That's the story for now. Subscribe, okay? Because I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff. I'm really interested in this. In what? In farming, okay? Growing beneficial bacteria, okay? You'll see on my channel I was into indigenous microorganisms, IMO, that I went out and harnessed on the field, and I've got them still in a container like this after 2 and some years. That's just part of the process. What I learned was that, you don't look at the fruit or vegetables. They're only getting their nutrients from the soil. The problem is the soil. So you got to bring life to the soil, and then the plants will produce life and fruit. So you got to deal with the soil. What makes the soil ecosystem work? Bacteria and fungi. So what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be going forwards, perfecting this worm system. This is part of the process. Perfecting the Bokashi system. Starting to do, I'll develop as well a system to do compost tea and worm tea. I'm also going to do biochar, which is charcoal, but not quite. Biochar is basically a housing for this bacteria. It's like charcoal. You guys know what charcoal is, yeah? But it's just 1 gram of this biochar. If it was to lay flat, because it's got so many levels and layers, if you were to lay it flat, it would be equal to a tennis court. 1 gram. So what happens is this stuff is a good house to house these bacteria. So once you get the biochar made, then you inoculate it with these bacteria, multiply bacteria, inoculate it. You can actually pick and choose which bacteria. I don't have a microscope. Maybe that's next in line. I don't know what I'm even looking at, but it's important to have the beneficial bacteria, yeah? This is a journey. So I'm going to be doing biochar, because the key to it, though, is when you get the biochar, when you get the bacteria, and you mix it in with the biochar, okay, through the tea, multiply the bacteria, mix it into this, and then add on top of that some fungi, bacteria, okay, add it to your compost, mix that all together, and then even one more step, feed it to your worms. What do the worms do in simplest form? They eat the bacteria, but in simplest form, think of the worms as creating capsules, little pills that are intact, so that the nutrients, whatever's in there, will be released in due time. So the very big process, a lot involved. I gotta go start to sow this thing. I want to keep you guys posted. Subscribe, click the like button, etc. I want to show you guys something. This is insane. Right? They're not all over my house, but they are here and there. I do see them. That's one. Here's the second one. You see that? Now people don't really talk about those fungus gnats, but I see them when I'm watching worm videos, etc. Compost, I see them. The things that you see flying up right away, that's those. And the thing is with those, they will lay eggs, and they will lay a lot of eggs, and all of a sudden you got an infestation. I don't have an infestation because you got to hit them with this kind of yellow tape, whatever tape. This is what's going to get those males from sinking into the dirt and creating those little eggs. So this plus BT, but I'm still not 100% sold on this, so we're going to figure it out. Okay, so listen, this is an internal deal here. I've got this happening in my house. There's no smells. It's beautiful. When the compost is happening, we're going to check that out, see how we can do it better. But this worm farm is a piece of cake. So far, no problem. But this is not the end all here. It's going to deplete everything that I eat, that's for sure. But I want to take this even further. I want to create compost. I want to create this stuff that's got value. I want to be able to pinpoint what I need to do. Because if you get this part right, you got a product that is going to be very valuable to grow your fruits and vegetables, whatever you got. That's what we're trying to do in gardening. We're trying to maximize production, etc. I don't even know much about gardening, guys. So everything during COVID, this is when this whole ordeal kind of opened up. But I am a good teacher when it comes to finding the simple way to do things. So stay put. I'm going to give you guys a diagram. Essentially, I'm going to point out this worm farm deal, the dimensions. So if you want to make it, I'm also going to show you the easy way to make the Bokashi brand now in a smaller way. I'm going to show you guys how to do the properly worm compost tea or compost tea. I'm going to show you how to do the biochar. I got to learn this. I got to make the mistakes. And then you're going to make less mistakes. So subscribe if you haven't. Take care. Bye-bye.